My sister told everyone I ruined her marriage and made our parents boycott my wedding. So I left the ceremony and married my fiancé in Bali. Months later, they found out I was pregnant. And just when I thought they'd stay away, my sister asked to co-parent my baby with me. Like we were two moms. I didn't answer. I called my lawyer. The first time I pictured my wedding, I was 6 years old. I had a pillowcase on my head, 2 daisies in my hands, and I was marrying my stuffed frog on the porch swing. They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine felt like a performance where half the cast never showed up. The music echoed through the ballroom louder than it should have. The cake stood tall and untouched by the people who were supposed to cut it with me. I remember holding a glass of champagne, smiling through the toasts, and pretending not to notice that the tables marked reserved for the Grant family were completely empty. Not one of them came. My aunts, uncles, cousins, people I'd grown up seeing every Thanksgiving and every 4th of July were nowhere to be found. And worse, neither were my parents. Only Ethan's family showed up from his side. His mom cried when I walked down the aisle, and his dad gave a heartfelt toast that left the entire room teary-eyed. His younger brother danced with me and made everyone laugh with his ridiculous moves. They welcomed me like I was their own, and I really tried to let that fill the hole. But there's no replacing your own family, especially when you spent your entire life trying to earn their approval. The absence wasn't a scheduling issue or an emergency. It was a choice. A deliberate one. I didn't cry that night. I told myself I wouldn't give them that. I smiled for photos. I laughed when the ring bearer fell asleep during the ceremony. I danced with Ethan like nothing else mattered, but inside I was fractured. It wasn't until the next morning when Ethan was asleep and I sat alone on the balcony of our hotel suite watching the sun rise over downtown Portland that the numbness lifted just enough to feel something real. Not grief. Not rage. Just confirmation. They really didn't care enough to come. But this story doesn't begin on my wedding day. It began long before, on a crisp October afternoon, when Ethan got down on one knee in the Japanese gardens at Washington Park. The leaves were vibrant orange and red, and the sky was a clear sheet of blue. He was trembling nervous in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. His voice cracked when he said my name, but his eyes were steady, full of love. I said yes before he even finished the question. A couple nearby cheered. Someone offered to take our picture. We kissed under a maple tree, and I remember thinking for the first time in a long while that maybe life was finally about to go right for me. I called my mom that evening, still glowing. "Hi, sweetheart," she answered, sounding distracted. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking with excitement. "Ethan proposed. Today. At the gardens." It was beautiful. There was a long pause. Then a hesitant, "Oh, that's sudden, isn't it?" she said. "Are you sure this isn't too soon? We've been together for almost 4 years." I reminded her, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Right," she murmured. "I guess I just thought you'd wait a bit longer. Especially with everything going on." I frowned. Everything going on. She didn't elaborate. Later that night, I figured it out. My sister Sabrina had recently separated from her husband Jeremy. I didn't know the full story yet, but Mom had mentioned it vaguely the week before, saying Sabrina was staying with them for a while. Still, I didn't see the connection. My engagement had nothing to do with her marriage falling apart. I called Sabrina the next morning. Part of me hoped maybe we could start over. Maybe the distance we'd always had would start to close with something as joyful as this. "Hey," I said. "I wanted you to hear it from me. Ethan proposed. We're getting married." There was a beat of silence. "Wow," she said finally. "Congrats, I guess. That's big news." No smile in her voice. No questions about the ring. No follow-up. Just a flat response and a quick "gotta go" before the line went dead. It didn't surprise me. Not really. Sabrina and I were never close. She was the golden child, the straight-A student, the one who made Mom and Dad beam at school events. I was the quiet one. The art kid who liked to read and draw and stay out of the way. We never fought exactly, but we never bonded either. Still, I never expected her to be cruel. 3 weeks later, Mom called again. Honey, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding, she said gently. I was in the middle of writing thank you notes to Ethan's family for a surprise engagement dinner they'd thrown us. I put down my pen. Okay, what about it? Your father and I were just thinking. With Sabrina going through her separation, maybe this isn't the right time for a big celebration. It's hard for her, you know. She's very fragile right now. So you want me to postpone my wedding? For Sabrina. Not postpone exactly. Just, maybe wait a little. Give her some time. Let things settle down. I felt something cold press against my chest. We've already started making deposits, I said. We booked the venue. Sent save the dates. People are making travel plans. I know, she said quickly. But family should come first. And right now your sister needs support. I'm your family too, I said, voice trembling. She didn't respond to that. Just said something vague about thinking it over and hung up. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just about the wedding. It never had been. This was about Sabrina always being first, always being the one worth rearranging life for. And me, the afterthought, the one expected to compromise, to understand, to stay quiet. I sat in silence for a long time, staring out the window, my coffee gone cold on the table. They weren't going to come. I could feel it already. And I had no idea just how far Sabrina was willing to go to make sure of it. It started small. At first, just a few odd reactions from extended family. A text from Aunt Denise that felt unusually distant. A voicemail from Cousin Lisa saying she wasn't sure if she could make the wedding after all things were just too complicated right now. I didn't think much of it. Not yet. But then I got the call from my dad. He rarely called me. Growing up, he'd always been the silent observer type content to let mom handle most of the emotional labor. So when my phone lit up with his name one morning while I was walking to the coffee shop near our apartment, I stopped cold. Hey, Dad, I answered, trying not to sound surprised. Hey, kiddo, he said. His voice was calm, measured. You got a minute? Sure. What's up? I could hear him exhale. Look, I know your mother spoke with you about the wedding and about Sabrina. I stayed quiet. She's not in a good place right now, he continued. She's staying with us full-time now. It's been a rough couple months. Jeremy's moved out for good. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. But I'm not sure how that's relevant to my wedding. Well, he said, pausing again. It's just. Maybe this isn't the best time for a big event. You know how people talk. The whole family's whispering, already trying to figure out what happened between them. And what does that have to do with me? Your sister's saying you've been close with Jeremy. I stopped walking. What? She's upset, he said. Really upset. Said there were things you said to her. That you were encouraging him to leave. Telling him he'd be better off. That's not true, I said, my voice tightening. I haven't even spoken to Jeremy in over a year. We were never close. I barely said 10 words to him at any family gathering. I'm not accusing you, Maddie. I'm just saying. This is the perception. And it's a sensitive time. Maybe holding off on the wedding would give people space to calm down. Focus on Sabrina for a while. So that's it, I asked. You want me to cancel my wedding to avoid offending Sabrina? He didn't answer directly. I hung up not long after that. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But the ache in my chest burned all the way home. Ethan found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a sticky note where I'd written out our RSVP deadline. What happened? He asked, setting his bag down. My family thinks I convinced Sabrina's husband to leave her, I said flatly. And they want me to postpone the wedding so she can have some peace. Ethan blinked. Wait, what? I told him everything. The phone call with my dad. The way the family was slowly pulling away. The lie Sabrina was telling and how my parents weren't even questioning it. This is insane, he said. Do they have any idea how long we've been planning this? They don't care, I whispered. Not really. If it's between Sabrina and me, they've already made their choice. The next few weeks were brutal. More relatives sent their regrets. Some stopped responding altogether. One of my cousins, who I used to be close with, texted me a vague, I hope things settle down soon, and then disappeared from all social media. I tried to confront it directly. I called my mom one afternoon needing to hear something, anything that would make sense of it. "Mom, why is Sabrina telling people I caused her divorce?" There was silence. Then a sigh. "She's hurting Maddie. She's confused. She says Jeremy changed because of things you said. Things you encouraged." What things? I snapped. I didn't even talk to him. I never called, never messaged. "You know that. I know what she told us," she said quietly. "And right now it's easier to just give her space." "So, you're going to support her lies?" I asked. "You're going to let her burn my wedding to the ground because she made a bad marriage choice?" "She's your sister, Madeline. Blood matters." I was stunned. "You're my mother," I said. "Doesn't that matter?" I didn't hear from her again after that. That night, Ethan and I sat on the floor of our living room surrounded by boxes of wedding decor that had just arrived. I picked up a place card holder and stared at it like it belonged to someone else's life. "Maybe we should elope," I said quietly. Ethan reached over and took my hand. "Number. We do this on our terms. Not theirs." I nodded, but the damage had already begun. Every time another RSVP came back with a no, it felt like another crack in the foundation of my sanity. Then came the message from Jeremy. I didn't expect it. It landed in my inbox like a ghost from a past I never paid attention to. "Hi Madeline, I'm really sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about all this. I don't know what Sabrina's been telling people, but I know none of this is your fault. I never believed it was." I stared at the screen, breath caught in my throat. "If you ever want to talk or just want to hear what really happened, I'm here. Again, I'm sorry you're going through this." I didn't reply. Not then. But that message was a turning point. Sabrina wasn't just venting, she was orchestrating. And my parents, knowingly or not, were helping her. The next week felt like I was living in the middle of a silent storm. On the surface, nothing looked different. The wedding plans were still moving. The florist confirmed the order. The venue coordinator sent over the layout. I picked up my dress from the boutique in downtown Portland with my best friend Olivia, who cried when I tried it on again and told me I looked like poetry. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling. The RSVP list started to shrink. People who had once gushed about how excited they were suddenly changed their tone. A few sent polite messages citing travel conflicts or unexpected work obligations. Others didn't bother with an excuse at all. They just stopped answering. One night, Olivia called me while I was meal prepping in the kitchen. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just tired," I said. "Trying not to burn this chicken." I heard her hesitate. "So, I wasn't going to say anything, but you should probably know. There's a group chat. Some of your cousins are in it. They've been talking about the wedding." I paused. "What do you mean it's not good, Maddie?" "Sabrina's in there. She's been posting these cryptic little messages. Stuff like how betrayal always comes from the people closest to you. And how some women just can't stand to see their sisters happy." My stomach twisted. "She hasn't said your name," Olivia continued, "but it's obvious who she means. And your Aunt Linda commented something like, maybe Jeremy wasn't the only reason the marriage didn't work." I leaned against the counter, the spatula slipping from my fingers. Are they really buying this? Some of them, yeah. Not all. But the ones who always fawned over Sabrina, they're all in. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, I thanked her and ended the call, then stared at my phone like it was some cursed object. Sabrina had always known how to craft an image. She was the polished one. The one with the curated Instagram and the sorority friends and the carefully posed holiday photos. So it didn't surprise me that she'd taken her heartbreak and wrapped it in soft lighting and melodramatic quotes. One day she posted a photo of a wilted rose on a windowsill. The caption read, "Lost cuts deepest when the knife is held by someone you called sister." Another post was a picture of her and Jeremy in happier times. The caption was just a broken heart emoji and the word remember. It was subtle, strategic, and deeply dishonest. I kept waiting for someone to message me to ask for my side, but no one did. Not even the cousins who had danced with me at family reunions or shared secrets with me at sleepovers when we were kids. They just disappeared. I tried to focus on the wedding. Ethan ever steady threw himself into the final details. He built the photo booth backdrop himself in the garage. He double-checked the table layout. He sat with me on the living room floor stuffing welcome bags with little jars of honey and handwritten notes. "We're still doing this," he said one night as we folded programs. "It's not about them." I know, I said, trying to believe it, but each day felt a little heavier. Each step closer to the altar felt like walking into a fog I couldn't shake. At one point, I called my cousin Emily. We hadn't talked in weeks, and I missed her. "Hey," I said when she answered. "I just wanted to check in. See how you were." There was a long pause. "I'm okay," she said finally, "just trying to stay out of the drama." "So, you've heard the rumors?" "Yeah." "Look, Maddie, I don't know what happened, but everyone's saying different things, and Sabrina's been through a lot." "So have I," I said. "But I guess no one cares about that." She didn't reply. I ended the call gently and added her name to the list of people I couldn't count on anymore. One night Ethan found me sitting in the closet hugging my knees. "They think I'm the villain," I whispered. "My own family." Because Sabrina's good at sounding broken. And I've never been good at making people feel sorry for me. Ethan sat down beside me and pulled me into his arms. "They're wrong," he said. "And if they can't see who you really are, then they never really saw you at all." The words comforted me more than I expected. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe in the smell of laundry detergent and his cologne. For that moment, I felt safe. The next morning, we finalized the seating chart. Half the family tables were now marked friends of the bride instead. Olivia offered to fill in wherever needed. So did Ethan's cousins. My in-laws were kind, generous people who barely knew me but treated me like I mattered. Like I was enough. I clung to that. To them. The day the invitations were scheduled to go out, I received a text from Sabrina. "I hope you're proud," it read. "You've taken everything from me. I hope your wedding is worth the wreckage you left behind." I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen until the words blurred. She wasn't just angry, she wanted to destroy me. And my parents. They still hadn't said a word. It was a Tuesday morning when Olivia sent me the screenshot. I was at my desk trying to focus on emails from the caterer when her message popped up. "Have you seen this?" I opened the image and my stomach dropped. It was a Facebook post from my mom. A photo of a little girl sitting alone on a bench in a garden, her face turned away from the camera. The caption read, "Some daughters build bridges, others just burn them to feel warm." There were over 20 comments already. Sympathy. Agreement. A few subtle jabs from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. Aunt Margaret had replied with praying for peace. Uncle Ray posted a broken heart emoji. The worst part was the likes. The silent support. As if this quiet condemnation was somehow noble. I didn't know what hurt more. The passive aggression or the fact that it wasn't even subtle. Ethan walked into the room just as I set my phone down on the desk. "What happened?" I handed it to him and watched his expression harden. "She posted this publicly?" he asked. With their real names commenting, I nodded. He looked at me carefully. "This is getting out of hand." "I know. You okay?" "Not really." He took a breath, then grabbed his phone and started typing. A few minutes later, he handed it to me. "Caleb says he can help. He's been following everything. If this keeps going, he thinks we can at least send a cease and desist to stop the defamation." I hesitated. Caleb Owens was one of Ethan's closest friends from college, now working at a mid-sized law firm in Seattle. He'd always been kind whenever we crossed paths, the kind of guy who remembered birthdays and sent thoughtful wedding gifts. But this felt personal. Messy. "I don't know," I said. "It feels extreme." "Extreme is publicly accusing you of ruining your sister's life," Ethan said. "Extreme is letting your mother make you into a villain online while pretending it's poetic." I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen. The image of the little girl on the bench still burned into my mind. That night, Caleb called. "Hey, Maddie," he said. "Sorry this isn't under better circumstances. Thanks for offering to help," I said softly. He asked me a few questions. About what had been said publicly. About Sabrina's posts. about any screenshots or written statements from people who had changed their mind about coming to the wedding. If you want to go forward, he said, I can draft a letter. Nothing aggressive, just a formal request to stop the falsehoods and take down what's already been posted. I'll think about it, I told him. The next few days felt quieter, but not in a good way. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a thunderstorm. My phone didn't buzz as much. No texts from cousins, no calls from relatives. But the air felt heavy. Then another post surfaced. This one from Sabrina. It was a photo of an ultrasound. Not hers, of course. A stock image. The caption read, I thought I'd be announcing something beautiful this summer. But life had other plans. Some wounds are too deep to explain. There were hundreds of reactions. Supportive messages, friends tagging each other to say stay strong. My mother commented with a heart and the words she deserved better. I felt sick. She was using motherhood now. Playing the victim of infertility, grief, betrayal, all rolled into a single narrative that cast her as the wronged woman and me as the heartless thief. Ethan and I were sitting on the porch that evening when I finally broke the silence. Let's send the letter. He didn't even hesitate. Okay, I'll call Caleb in the morning. And then what I asked. Then we get married. We move forward. We stop letting them write your story for you. It sounded simple, but nothing felt simple anymore. That weekend Lorraine called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail that started with your sister is hurting and ended with you don't know what motherhood does to a woman's heart. I deleted it. Then she texted me a photo from my childhood. Me and Sabrina sitting in matching dresses on Easter Sunday. I was 5, she was 7. We were both holding little baskets of plastic eggs and laughing. The caption said, I miss this. I didn't reply. Later that night, Ethan sat down next to me with his laptop and opened up a draft of the letter Caleb had sent. It was calm, precise. A formal notice that defamation and false allegations could have legal consequences. It asked for the removal of the social media posts and the cessation of all further public discussion implying wrongdoing. It wasn't angry, it was controlled. I signed it. Then I closed my computer and stared out the window for a long time listening to the wind tapping softly against the glass. We had tried kindness, silence, patience. Now we were choosing something else. The hallway outside the bridal suite was eerily quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning and the echo of someone's heels down the corridor. Inside, I sat on the edge of a velvet ottoman still in my robe, staring blankly at the wedding gown hanging on the door. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but I felt like I was watching someone else's disaster unfold in slow motion. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Olivia. Check your email, now. I unlocked my phone and tapped into my inbox. There it was, forwarded from someone I didn't even know. A public post from a Facebook account under a fake name. But the photo was of me and Ethan taken from our engagement announcement. The caption was brutal. How would you feel if your sister married your husband? I stared at the screen in disbelief. There were hundreds of shares. Comments ranged from confused to cruel. Some were already speculating about my character, calling me everything from a snake to a manipulator. And then I saw a name I recognized. Aunt Marlene had commented, I can't believe this. If it's true, I'm heartbroken. My stomach dropped. Olivia burst through the door breathless. You saw it, I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. It's spreading, fast. People are starting to talk downstairs. A few of your mom's cousins just left the venue. I stood up, hands trembling. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. I looked like a bride, but I felt like a scandal. Ethan walked in a moment later, phone in hand. He had this look on his face, calm but with a fire building behind his eyes. That quiet, focused kind of anger I'd only seen a handful of times. We need to go, he said. Go or anywhere, but here. He walked up to me and took both my hands. His palms were warm, grounding. This doesn't feel right. It's not what we planned. It's not what we deserve. We don't have to stay here and absorb this chaos. We can leave it behind. You're talking about leaving our own wedding. I'm talking about protecting our peace. The phrase stuck with me. Protecting our peace. I had spent so long bracing for impact, just trying to survive the next hit from Sabrina, the next silence from my parents. But in that moment, I realized I didn't have to. I didn't have to let them control my story. I asked him quietly, what would we do? He pulled out his phone again. I've already checked flights. There's one to Bali. Leaves in 6 hours. We'd have to move fast, but I can make it work. I can book it now. My eyes filled with tears. You'd really do that, just disappear with you? In a heartbeat. Behind us, Olivia was already opening my suitcase. She pulled out a white sundress and a lightweight blazer. If we're doing this, you're not flying in a silk robe, she said with a wink. I let out a shaky laugh, the first real laugh in days. While Olivia helped me change, Ethan made the calls first to the airline, then to the hotel concierge to check us out early. I texted our officiant with a simple message. Change of plans. We won't be needing your services today. Thank you for everything. Then came the hardest part, walking out. We took the back elevator, the one that opened directly into the underground garage. I clutched Ethan's arm, afraid we'd run into someone, that we'd be stopped, questioned. But no one was there, not even a bellhop. As the car pulled away from the hotel, I glanced back at the awning where I was supposed to arrive in a white limo. My mother had insisted on the floral arch. My father had vetoed a live band. They weren't inside, but their silence was. Ethan held my hand all the way to the airport. Neither of us said much. What was there to say that our wedding had turned into a PR nightmare, that our family had traded us for Sabrina's sob story? When we arrived at the airport, the gate agent looked at us with mild surprise as we checked in with 2 carry-ons and no smiles. I wondered what she saw. A runaway bride, a couple escaping cold feet, or just 2 people tired of being hurt. Once we were past security, we found a quiet corner and sat down. I leaned my head on Ethan's shoulder. Do you think they'll ever understand why we left? He kissed my hair. Maybe. Maybe not. But this was never about them understanding. It was about us surviving. Boarding was called not long after. As we walked down the jet bridge, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The wedding was gone. But so was the wait. I texted Olivia one last time before turning off my phone. Thank you. For everything. Tell them whatever you want. I don't care anymore. Then I powered it off. As the plane taxied down the runway, I looked out the window. Portland faded beneath us, gray and green and full of ghosts. We didn't speak again until we were over the Pacific. Ethan reached for my hand again and squeezed gently. We'll write our own vows. On a beach. Just us. Promise, promise. And for the first time in what felt like years, I let myself believe in something new. Something clean. Something that didn't come with silence or accusations or impossible conditions. Just love, just us. The ceremony happened on a Thursday afternoon under the golden light of a Balinese sunset. It wasn't planned, not in the traditional sense. There was no seating chart, no RSVP list, no one fussing over centerpieces or cocktail napkins. Just a soft breeze, the sound of waves in the background, and Ethan's hand in mine. The resort concierge had helped us find a local officiant and 2 tourists from Michigan who agreed to be our witnesses. They cried harder than I did, which made me laugh in the middle of our vows. I wore the white sundress Olivia had packed, and Ethan wore linen pants he found at a nearby shop. I hadn't even touched my wedding gown. It stayed in Portland like the version of me who thought I had to beg for space in my own family. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Ethan kissed my forehead first, then my lips. It wasn't a kiss for show. It was quiet and real and steady. After everything, it felt like landing after a long, turbulent flight. That night, we sat on the beach with our feet buried in the sand and a bottle of local wine between us. The moon rose slowly, casting silver over the waves. I didn't speak for a long time. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, my silence wasn't being ignored, it was being honored. Eventually, I pulled out my phone, not to scroll or doom read, but to write. I opened a blank note and started typing messages for the people who had shown up for me when it counted. Olivia. My boss Karen. My two cousins from Virginia who had dared to attend the wedding despite the whispers. Ethan's parents who called me their daughter long before I said any vows. I wrote thank you letters. Not dramatic or overly sentimental, just honest notes of gratitude. I didn't send them yet. I wasn't ready to re-engage with the outside world, but I needed to remind myself there were still people who had seen me clearly. 3 days passed before I called Caleb. He picked up on the second ring. Madeline, he said, sounding both surprised and unsurprised. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I leaned against the wooden frame of our bungalow. The ocean breeze pushed strands of hair into my mouth. I'm ready, I said. His voice turned sharper. Ready how to fight back. There was a beat of silence. Then he said, tell me everything. I told him about the Facebook post and the anonymous account about how it spread like wildfire. I described the wedding venue's atmosphere, the relatives who left, the damage already done. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. Instead, I sounded like someone reading a list of damages after a storm. He asked questions. Who had reposted it? Who had liked it? Did I have screenshots? Did anyone reach out after reading it? I had most of it saved. Olivia had been documenting everything the moment it went public. She had the timestamps, the IP address trail, even a short list of people we believed were involved. You're in luck, Caleb said. Public defamation is easier to track than people think, especially when they use burner accounts tied to old phone numbers or recycled emails. Can you send a letter, a warning, already drafting it? And so it began. While Ethan booked us a massage or planned snorkeling trips, I spoke with Caleb daily. He helped me set up a document folder, gather testimonies, and prepare a cease and desist letter. The first one would go directly to my parents. The second to Sabrina. It won't stop them completely, he warned. But it'll put them on notice. And if they keep pushing, we escalate. Part of me still felt guilty. Like I was betraying something sacred by taking legal action against my own family. But another part, the part they had humiliated and ignored and slandered, felt something close to peace. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. Ethan and I stayed in Bali longer than planned. Each morning we'd wake to sunlight through sheer curtains and the sound of scooters humming past the resort. We swam. We hiked to temples. We made love like the world wasn't watching. One morning Ethan brought me coffee in bed and said, I know you don't want to think about Portland yet, but I've been looking at places in San Diego. I looked up from my journal. You want to move? He shrugged. It's a fresh start. We don't owe anyone an explanation. That phrase again. A fresh start. I nodded. Let's talk about it when we get back. On our final evening, I wrote one last letter. Not a thank you note, not a legal draft. A goodbye. To my parents, though, I never sent it. You taught me that blood doesn't always mean safety. That silence can be louder than betrayal. That sometimes the only way to heal is to leave. I still love the idea of you. But I can't keep loving people who only see me when they want something from me. I folded the letter and burned it in a small bowl on the terrace. The flame danced for a moment, then died out. The next morning I woke to a text from Caleb. Letters sent. Buckle up. I showed it to Ethan and he simply nodded. Let's go home, he said. And just like that, Bali faded behind us. But the woman who left Portland wasn't the one who came back. We had been back in Portland for 2 weeks when it happened. A regular Saturday, warm enough for short sleeves and iced coffee. Ethan and I decided to grab lunch at a little cafe near the Riverwalk. I was halfway through my grilled vegetable panini when I saw him. Jeremy Carlisle. He looked almost exactly the same. Tall, clean-shaven, the kind of careful posture that always made him seem too stiff for comfort. I hadn't seen him since before the engagement drama, and definitely not since the wedding chaos. He was standing in line holding a clipboard, clearly on a work break. I nudged Ethan and tilted my head slightly. He followed my eyes, then raised his eyebrows. You want to say hi? Ethan asked softly. I hesitated. But Jeremy looked up just then, and our eyes met. I expected awkwardness. Maybe a nod or the kind of smile people give ex-in-laws in parking lots. But Jeremy surprised me. He stepped out of line and walked right over. Madeline. Ethan. Wow. Hi, Jeremy, I said cautiously. This is unexpected, he continued, smiling politely. Didn't expect to run into you two here. Just grabbing lunch, Ethan said. You client meeting down the street. Thought I'd sneak in a sandwich. There was a beat of silence before he said, I heard. Well, I didn't really hear much. Just whispers. But you got married, right? We did, I said, watching his face. He looked genuinely pleased. That's great. I'm glad. In Bali, I added. Just the two of us. Jeremy blinked. Wait, what? We eloped, Ethan explained. Things got complicated back here. Jeremy let out a quiet laugh, not unkind, just incredulous. Complicated? Yeah. That sounds about right. We talked a little longer. He asked about the weather in Bali. I asked how work was, but the entire time I could feel something building. Jeremy was fidgeting slightly, his eyes glancing between the two of us like he had something more to say. Finally, after another sip of his coffee, he cleared his throat. Listen, he said. I hope it's okay if I bring this up, but there's something I think you should know. I put down my sandwich. It's about Sabrina, he said quietly. Of course it was. Go ahead, I said. Jeremy exhaled and leaned slightly across the table, lowering his voice. I know there was a lot of drama around your wedding. I wasn't involved and honestly, I tried to keep my distance from it all. But I heard what she told people. About you, about the timeline, about the divorce. You mean the part where I supposedly stole her husband? I asked flatly. He winced. Yeah, that. Ethan stiffened beside me, his arm resting protectively across the back of my chair. Jeremy shook his head. I never believed it. And honestly, I should have said something back then. I just didn't want to stir up more chaos. But the truth is, you had nothing to do with our divorce. Nothing. I looked him straight in the eye. Then what did Jeremy glanced around, then looked back at us. You remember when Sabrina and I started having issues publicly, it was about kids. She wanted them, I didn't. But that wasn't the whole story. I nodded slowly. He lowered his voice even more. One night after one of our bigger fights, she came into the living room acting like everything was fine. We were talking about maybe trying counseling again. I said I was willing to discuss the idea of kids, not promise anything but talk. And she got this strange look on her face. Kind of smug. She said something like, it won't matter soon anyway. My stomach turned. She told me, he continued, that she'd stopped taking her birth control months ago. Without telling me. I blinked. She said it like it was a joke, but it wasn't. She'd been trying to get pregnant. Secretly. That's why I left, he said simply. Not the arguing. Not the different visions of the future. That. The breach of trust. I couldn't stay married to someone who would manipulate me like that. I felt my throat go dry. Jeremy looked down for a moment, then back up. I didn't tell your parents. I didn't tell anyone. I figured it was over, I just wanted to move on. But then I started hearing these rumors. That you were the reason we split. That you were planting things in my head. It made me sick. I could feel Ethan bristling next to me. So why now? I asked gently. Because I see the two of you, and I realize how unfair it was to let that story hang in the air. If there's anything I can do to set the record straight, just say the word. You'd be okay with me telling people the truth? I asked, surprised. Tell whoever you need to, Jeremy said firmly. I've got nothing to hide. He pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it across the table. If your lawyer needs a statement, I'll write one. Thank you, I said quietly. He nodded once, then stood up. Congrats again, he said before heading toward the counter. When he was gone, Ethan turned to me. You okay? I think so, I said, staring at the card. It felt like one more brick had been pulled from the wall Sabrina tried to build around me. She had blamed me to protect herself, and now the one person who could clear the fog had just handed me a flashlight. I slipped the card into my bag. Let's go home, I said. And for the first time in a long time, the word home didn't taste bitter. I woke up the next morning with the weight of everything we'd learned from Jeremy pressing heavy on my chest. The betrayal. The years of silence. The lies that cost me my wedding. I thought about how many times I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. How many conversations I'd swallowed whole hoping one day the truth would just rise to the surface on its own. But the truth doesn't float. It sinks under the weight of others' narratives if you don't pull it up yourself. So I did. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and started to write. Not with rage, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Caleb had already prepared a set of documents in case we ever needed to defend ourselves legally. But what I was writing now wasn't legal defense. It was personal. It was everything I had carried for so long lined up in paragraphs, plain and unembellished. I included only facts. The timeline. The silence. The smears. The emails from relatives uninviting themselves. The screenshots from the group chats my friends showed me. And yes, with Jeremy's permission, I included what he told us about the birth control betrayal and Sabrina's decision to spin her unraveling marriage into a blame game against me. I attached Caleb's notarized statement confirming the timeline and factual backing of every point. Ethan sat beside me while I wrote. He didn't say much. He just rested a hand on my back now and then like a lighthouse keeping me steady while I crossed the waves. After 3 hours, I read the whole thing out loud to him. He nodded, said it was strong but fair. It was everything people deserved to know. I posted it that afternoon, no names, just initials and careful phrasing. But everyone who needed to understand it would. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't even share it widely. I just let it sit. And then the messages started. First came the quiet ones. A cousin I hadn't heard from in years asking if what I wrote was true. A former neighbor from our childhood block saying they'd always wondered why I'd been left out of family gatherings. A college friend who had once attended a barbecue at my parents' house telling me they remembered how Sabrina had always found ways to pull attention back to herself. Then came the louder ones. Aunts and uncles writing long rambling texts about how these kinds of family matters shouldn't be aired in public. Others defending Sabrina, accusing me of trying to destroy her image when she was clearly still grieving. But even among them there was hesitation now. Not full denial, just discomfort. Like they were realizing maybe they didn't know the whole story. Lorraine and Douglas didn't respond directly. But that night, a distant relative forwarded me a post from my mother's Facebook page. It read, "Some people rewrite history when their conscience is clear. But silence doesn't equal guilt. It equals class." It had that vague performative tone Lorraine always used when she was trying to seem graceful while seething. What struck me most was what didn't happen. Sabrina didn't post anything. Not a photo. Not a story. Not a cryptic quote. Her social media, once a daily stream of curated perfection and inspirational captions, had gone dark. No one had seen her since. A week passed. Then 2. I got more messages this time from people I didn't expect. A few relatives apologized not for not attending the wedding but for not reaching out sooner. One even admitted she had believed the rumors but felt sick reading what I'd written. I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't feel the need to rehash old pain or reopen doors I had closed for a reason. What mattered was that the narrative had shifted. My silence no longer held space for others' stories. It held my own. Ethan printed a copy of the post and framed it for me. Not because it was poetic, but because it was proof. That I stood up. That I stopped letting my love for peace silence my right to truth. At work, my colleagues, many of whom had attended the wedding and seen how thin our guest list was, read the post and offered quiet nods of support. One of them, a senior manager, told me she had been through something similar with her own family and wished she had spoken up sooner. Caleb called later that week to say the post had made waves. Apparently, one of our distant relatives had contacted a legal consultant about defamation, but after reading the post and confirming it contained no false statements, no one was willing to move forward. "You protected yourself well," Caleb said, "and more importantly, you told the truth." That night, Ethan and I went for a walk around our neighborhood. It was cool out, the leaves rustling gently as we passed under the trees. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Every step forward felt lighter. There was one moment, though, when Ethan stopped walking. He looked at me soft but serious and asked, "Do you feel like you've let it go?" I thought about it for a moment. The answer wasn't simple. The pain was still there. The memories still hurt, But I didn't feel like I had to explain myself anymore. I didn't feel like I was chasing validation or begging people to believe me. I looked up at him and said, I feel like I've finally been heard. And I meant it. We kept walking. Somewhere far away, I imagined Sabrina reading the post. Maybe alone. Maybe with our parents sitting stiffly on the other end of the couch. I didn't hope for her pain. But I hoped she saw the reflection of herself clearly. Not the version she projected, but the one she had hidden even from herself. And I hoped she knew I was done being quiet. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days after my post had made its quiet rounds through extended family group chats and passive-aggressive phone calls, I received a carefully worded email from Lorraine. The subject line was just my name. No greeting. No warmth. The message began with a familiar tone, faux concern masquerading as maturity. We understand you're going through a lot emotionally. Sabrina and I have spoken and agree that if removing the post would help us move forward as a family, we are both willing to offer an apology. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment. No admittance of wrongdoing. No mention of the lies. No acknowledgement of the years of cruelty, manipulation, or the smear campaign that kept half our family from my wedding. Just a performance. Just image management. And there it was again if I took it down. If I was willing to meet them halfway. If I could be reasonable. As if my pain was a negotiation. I didn't reply right away. I forwarded the email to Caleb. He called me 10 minutes later, no greeting either. They're trying to get ahead of something. Probably worried about fallout. Don't respond yet. We'll document everything. Ethan read the email over my shoulder. His silence spoke volumes, but then he squeezed my hand and said calmly, "Let them stew." That night, I did write back though. Not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted them to know I saw through them completely. I don't need apologies with terms and conditions, I wrote. If you're embarrassed by the truth, that's your burden. Not mine. I clicked send and closed my laptop with a finality that felt satisfying. But of course, that wasn't the end. The next morning, Sabrina made her return to social media in spectacular fashion. A long Facebook post in soft cursive font overlaid on a background of a candlelit sunset. It read like a self-help devotional. She spoke vaguely of trauma and family betrayal and how some people can't stand to see others heal. It didn't name me. It didn't have to. The comments filled quickly. Cousins, church friends. Even a few family members I hadn't heard from since my engagement. All expressing support, all offering hugs and prayers and pity. Aunt Beverly even wrote, "You've always been the strong one. Don't let haters dim your light." I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly gave myself a headache. An hour later, Lorraine posted her own version. This time it was a more passive-aggressive piece of fiction about watching your child be maligned by jealousy and bitterness. She ended it with a Bible verse and a photo of her and Sabrina smiling at a brunch that was clearly staged. I didn't engage. I didn't comment, but others did. 3 of my cousins DM'd me screenshots. "Are they serious?" one wrote. "I thought this was done," another said. The 3rd cousin, Laura, was more direct. "I know what they did to you. Let me know if you ever want me to say something publicly." I thanked her but told her no. Not yet. Instead, I called Caleb again. "They're escalating," I said. He sighed. "I figured they might. I've started a file already. If they keep posting things that imply you're unstable or jealous, we'll consider defamation. Especially if it costs you work or affects your reputation." "Do I even want to go that far?" I asked. "That's up to you. But you don't have to roll over. Just keep records. We've got options." Later that evening, Ethan and I went for a walk around our neighborhood. It was cooler than usual with a soft breeze threading through the trees. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to hit back harder. Part of me just wants to move on." "Maybe you can do both," he said. "Stand your ground without letting it consume you." I thought telling the truth would be the end of it. But it feels like just another beginning. "They're not angry because you lied," he said. "They're angry because you told the truth out loud." He was right. And it didn't make it any easier. That weekend we received another message, this time through my Uncle Lorraine's older brother. He texted me directly. I think your mom's scared. She's losing people. Some of us are starting to talk. It felt almost surreal hearing that. For years, Lorraine and Sabrina had controlled the narrative so tightly. But now things were shifting. Uncle Joel followed up with, "Just so you know, I never believed those things she said about you. I just didn't know what to do." I didn't respond. I appreciated it, but silence had long been his choice. And now he wanted to stand in the light because it was safer. I was learning how to accept complicated truths. That not everyone who finally sees you is worthy of standing beside you. Monday morning, Caleb sent me a draft. It was a formal notice worded calmly but firmly requesting that Lorraine and Sabrina cease all indirect public remarks implying defamation, manipulation, or instability on my part. It included examples. It referenced precedent. It was a warning shot. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. I approved it. He sent it that afternoon. By Wednesday, both Sabrina and Lorraine had quietly taken down their posts. No explanation, no apology. Just silence. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. But it felt like progress. Caleb called to confirm receipt. That got their attention, he said. Good. They're not going to stop being who they are, Madeline. But now they know you're not afraid of them. And that more than anything was what I needed. Not revenge. Not validation. Just for them to understand that the version of me they thought they could silence no longer existed. I was my own storm now. And the forecast wasn't in their favor. Things grew quiet after that. Not peaceful. Just quiet. No more cryptic posts. No more emails with veiled threats. No cousins reaching out with screenshots. It was as if collectively the Grant family had decided to pretend I no longer existed. And honestly, that suited me fine. I decided not to sue. I told Caleb over the phone one afternoon while walking through a local bookstore, the smell of old paper and coffee grounding me in a strange kind of calm. I just said I think I'm done. He didn't argue. Then that's the right call. It wasn't because they didn't deserve it. It was because I didn't need it. I didn't want courtrooms and headlines and depositions. I didn't need a judge to tell me what I already knew. I had won something much better, my own voice. That week I launched a blog. An anonymous one. No names, no photos. No backstory that could be traced. Just my words. I called it The Uninvited Sister. It started with the story. Not in full detail, just enough to set the tone. Then I wrote about silence. About manipulation disguised as loyalty. About what it means to be excluded from a wedding you paid for. About how trauma can come from people who still send you birthday cards. I didn't expect much. I didn't even link it to any social account. But 3 days later, I checked the stats and thousands of women had already read it. Hundreds of comments poured in. Stories, confessions, gratitude, rage, relief. I had opened a door, and they were walking through it. One night, curled on the couch with Ethan, he looked up from reading a few of the comments and said, "You know, I think you need a pen name." "Oh, what? A pen name?" He grinned. "Something fierce. Mysterious. Like Madeline Justice." I burst out laughing. "That sounds like a lawyer on daytime television." "Exactly. It's perfect. She shows up in the courtroom with a vengeance and a good haircut." I shook my head, still smiling. "You're ridiculous." "You're powerful," he said, suddenly more serious. "People are listening to you. You're helping them. That matters." For the first time in a long time, I believed that. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Thursday. A cream-colored envelope with my full name written in elegant cursive. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Lorraine. I opened it in the kitchen, letting the paper unfold on the counter like a relic from another era. The words were sharp, measured. She was always best on paper, where she could control tone and erase emotion. She didn't apologize. Instead, she threatened. "If the defamatory material remains online, I will have no choice but to explore public avenues, including speaking to the press." No signature. Just mother. I stood there for a long time reading it again. And again. My stomach didn't twist. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't scared. I was tired. I scanned the letter, sent it to Caleb, and went about my day. He called that night. She really put this in writing. Yep, then I'll handle it. Within 48 hours, he drafted a response. A cease and desist letter that was direct, professional, and packed with legal weight. He reminded Lorraine that no names were mentioned, that no laws were broken, that pursuing media contact would only amplify the very narrative she claimed to resent. He mailed it and emailed it. Then we waited. No response. Not a word. The silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like avoidance. But I didn't care. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I wasn't even trying to be heard. I just wanted to be left alone. One night, I closed the laptop after writing a new post titled "What We Do with the Rage." It was about transformation. About how we take what we survive and use it to carve new paths. I talked about not forgiving people who haven't changed. About protecting your peace like property. I ended it with a line that wasn't meant to be dramatic, but it stayed with me. Some people don't deserve a seat at your table even if they built the house. After I posted it, I poured a glass of wine and joined Ethan on the porch. The air was cool, heavy with pine and dusk. "You think they'll ever try again?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "Because I won't give them another opening." He nodded. "You think that's cold?" I asked. "No," he said. "I think it's honest." I leaned against his shoulder and closed my eyes. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure or explanations or apologies. I had built something they could never touch, a life where their approval wasn't the currency. A name I chose for myself. A voice that was finally mine. It happened on a Wednesday morning in late spring. I was standing in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil when I realized I couldn't remember the last time my body had felt quite right. At first, I brushed it off. I'd been working hard, writing late into the night, letting meals blur into one another. But something inside me buzzed with quiet awareness. A subtle shift. A strange stillness that felt like anticipation. By Friday, I was staring at 2 pink lines on a test I bought with trembling hands from a drugstore 2 towns over. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for 10 whole minutes, unable to process what I was seeing. Pregnant. Me. Not in the abstract someday kind of way, but now, here. In this body, I was finally learning to trust again. When I told Ethan that evening, he just stared at me for a beat too long. Then he laughed. Not from shock, not from fear, but from something deeper. Like the world had finally tilted back into place. "We're having a baby," he said, holding my face in both hands. "We're having a baby," I whispered. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't ask how I felt. He just pulled me into him and said, "Then we'll make a world where they never have to wonder who loves them." In the weeks that followed, we kept it quiet, not because of superstition or secrecy, but because we wanted it to be ours for a little while. I wrote about it on the blog without naming it, just small pieces. Stories about beginnings. About soil before it blooms. About fear that tastes like joy. The readers knew. Women always know. They flooded the comments with warmth, never asking for confirmation, just offering love. I lived in that bubble. In that golden hush. Until someone pierced it. Lorraine. She found out, as she always did, through someone else. A friend of a friend. A coworker's niece. However, it happened, she knew. The envelope came in the mail again. Cream-colored. Familiar. I didn't open it right away. It sat on the kitchen counter for 2 full days before Ethan finally said, "Do you want me to read it first?" I shook my head. Number I need to. Inside was a card. Soft pink, a watercolor of 2 elephants trunk to trunk under a tree. Inside, the message in her handwriting. "We were surprised and overjoyed to hear your news. Sabrina and I would love to be involved in your child's life. Perhaps if you're open to it, they could grow up with 2 mothers instead of 1. I read it again. And again. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of what had come before. Just a delusional suggestion that somehow Sabrina could co-parent a child she had nothing to do with. Enclosed with the card was a handmade photo album. On the cover, gold foil letters spelled out in loving memory of family. Inside were pictures of me and Sabrina as children, of Lorraine holding us both, of holidays, graduations, moments that now felt warped and incomplete. I didn't finish flipping through it. I closed it and placed the entire package into a drawer I hadn't opened in months. The one where I kept old photos and letters I wasn't ready to burn but refused to display. Then I blocked every number I knew. Lorraine. Sabrina. Even a few cousins I suspected might try to reach out on their behalf. The door wasn't just closed, it was sealed. That night I told Ethan what she'd written. He didn't react the way I expected. No rage. No jokes. Just quiet disbelief. She really thinks she can rewrite the ending, he said. Not this time. What are you going to do? I looked down at the tiny swell just beginning to rise beneath my shirt. It wasn't visible yet, but I felt it. Every moment, every breath, like a heartbeat beneath mine. I'm going to raise this child in truth, I said. No illusions. No performances. No fake family albums. Ethan nodded, his eyes soft. That's the best thing anyone's ever said, he whispered. In the days that followed, I felt a strange peace settle into me. Not a perfect one. Not the kind you read about in books. But a grounded calm that came from knowing who I was. Who I wasn't. I wrote again. A post titled "The Door We Don't Reopen." I didn't mention the pregnancy. I didn't mention Lorraine or Sabrina. But the message was clear. Not every bond deserves a second chance. Not every history needs a sequel. And when someone shows you what family means to them, believe them the first time. I received more responses than ever. Women who'd raised children on their own terms. Women who'd walked away from parents who weaponized tradition. Women who learned that legacy doesn't mean loyalty. Each message was a gift. Each story a reminder that I wasn't alone. One reader wrote, "Your child already has the best mother. The one who chose to end the cycle." I printed that message and taped it to the inside of my journal. It stayed there whispering back at me on the days I needed it most. I didn't know what the future held. Whether I'd have a boy or a girl. Whether they'd have my stubbornness or Ethan's quiet strength. But I knew this. They would never doubt who I was. They would never wonder if I chose them. They would grow up knowing that love isn't something you perform for approval. It's something you protect. Fiercely. And without apology. The morning light spilled through the window as I watched Ethan swaying gently with our daughter in his arms. Her tiny hand rested against his chest, her breathing soft and steady as if the world outside had nothing to prove. We hadn't chosen a name right away. It took time. It had to mean something. In the end, we chose Grace. Because she was born not just of love, but of letting go. I used to think closure came with apologies. With tearful reunions and dramatic confessions. But, standing on that quiet shore watching Ethan hum a lullaby into the top of our daughter's head, I realized something else. Closure isn't given, it's claimed. I wasn't waiting for my parents to show up with remorse in their eyes. I wasn't hoping Sabrina would suddenly understand the damage she'd done. That story had ended the moment I stopped editing myself to fit their narrative. We live now in a rented cottage along the Oregon coast. Nothing fancy. A single story with weathered siding and a garden full of lavender and wild thyme. I wrote in the mornings, usually with Grace in a wrap against my chest, her heartbeat syncing with mine. My blog had grown. Not in fame or monetization, but in meaning. Women wrote to me from all over. Nurses. Teachers. Stay-at-home moms. Lawyers. Women who had been erased by their own families and had quietly rebuilt something new. I had never met most of them. But in some way I loved them. Because they had done what I did. They had chosen themselves. One afternoon, as we walked along the beach, Ethan turned to me. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "What, leaving the wedding behind? Cutting them off? All of it?" I thought about it. About the day I stood in a gown no one picked with me in a room filled with people who loved me for who I was, not who I'd pretended to be. About the sound of ocean waves in Bali as we promised each other forever without witnesses. About the first flutter of life inside me. About the first time I said no and didn't explain. No, I said. Not once. He smiled, reaching down to scoop up Grace as she began to fuss. She quieted instantly. That was his gift. The ability to still storms with presence alone. I used to wonder if I would be a good mother. If the absence of my own could be filled with intention. But then I looked at my daughter and knew. She would never have to earn love. She would never be compared to anyone else in her own home. She would never be asked to be smaller so someone else could shine. She would grow up with truth and quiet and fierce protection. One morning, a cousin I hadn't heard from in over a year emailed me. She'd seen the blog. She recognized the voice. She wrote, "I didn't believe you then. I do now. I'm sorry, I stayed silent." I didn't write back. Not because I was angry, but because I no longer needed that bridge. Some doors are better left closed. But I printed the email. Not as a trophy. As a reminder that silence speaks, but so does truth. Sometimes louder. Weeks later, a package arrived. No note, just a soft baby blanket and a photo of me as a toddler with Lorraine. On the back, someone had written, "Come home." I stood there for a while, holding that photo. And then I walked it outside to the fire pit and let it go. Not in anger, in finality. Later that night, I held Grace by the window and whispered, "You don't come from shame. You come from choice." Ethan wrapped his arm around me, his chin resting on my shoulder. "You ready?" he asked. "For what?" "For whatever's next." I looked out at the darkened waves. The moon hung low, casting silver onto water like a path only we could see. "I think I am," I said. There was no big moment. No dramatic phone call, no confrontation. Just a slow, steady walking away from what no longer served us. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up and stays. It's who protects your name when you're not in the room. Who listens when you say that hurt, who never asks you to dim so they can shine. As Grace reached up and wrapped her fingers around mine, I smiled. Because in that small gesture, I saw everything I had fought for. Peace, clarity, freedom. A future not built on guilt or obligation but choice. So no, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed right here. And if you're reading this wondering if walking away makes you selfish or cold or heartless, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. You're not broken for leaving what broke you. You're brave. You're enough. You're already home.